I'm Dwayne Lester, and this is The Paradigm Shift. I want to start off today with a short story about women's panties. Not long ago, there was a store owner who was always looking for better deals for his customers. He drove all over, looking for what he called offbeat suppliers and sources to get special buys below what he was already paying. Now, he found a guy who would sell him women's panties for $2 a dozen. His current supplier could only give him women's panties for $2.50 a dozen. Now, at that price, he could sell them for $3 for $1, but the new supplier made it possible for him to sell them for less, at a quarter each or $4 for $1. He noted that he didn't make as much profit per pair of panties, but because he sold 3 times the amount, the overall profit was much greater. The store owner would take this lesson and apply it over the life of his career, eventually going from one little store in Bentonville, Arkansas, to the largest retail chain in the world. The store was Walmart, and the store owner was Sam Walton. Now let's walk back through this entire process, and what do you find? You find people acting in their own self-interest and winning. The supplier of the panties won because he was able to sell his product for the price he wanted to Sam Walton. Sam Walton won because he was able to make a profit by selling his product to his customers. And the customers won because they were able to purchase a product for less than they could before. Now, what is consistent in all of those things? First off, each party placed a value on what they were buying and selling. The value wasn't intrinsic. Each member looked for the objective best value. The supplier felt $2 was worth more than a dozen panties, but the panties were worth more than Walton. He felt $1 was worth more than 4 pair, even though the customer valued the panties more than the dollar. Meanwhile, other customers might value the dollar more, so they don't buy anything. Each participant placed their own value on what they were trading based on what they rationally felt was best for them. This is possible because there's an absence of force. Not one person was forced to buy anything for more than they wanted, and not one person was forced to sell anything for less than they wanted. In other words, every step is voluntary. It's just. This absence of force shows a respect for individual rights. Each person owns their property and can enter into trades based on their own self-interest. No one is exploited. They can't be, because no rational person accepts a deal that does them harm. Everyone gains, or they don't take the deal. They simply walk away. This is what capitalism looks like. It's a socio-economic system where individual rights are respected, and because of that respect, no force is possible. Under capitalism, property trades are made because they are mutually beneficial. Now, I know what you're thinking. This didn't happen in a capitalist system, and you're right. This occurred in what Ayn Rand referred to as a mixed economy, meaning there was a mixture in varying degrees of freedom and controls, of voluntary choice and government coercion, of capitalism and statism. Of all the mixed economies in history, America's has been the freest and has seen the greatest success. Now, let me tell you another story relating to this, a personal story that I think is kind of cool. I bought a gallon of milk. Now, this all started when I went to my refrigerator and noticed we were out. So I got in my car, drove to the store, and went inside. Now, mind you, this is in a town of about 1,500 people, small town, Missouri. The store layout has the milk as far away from the front door as possible because people have studied what you come to the store for, and they take those things and put them so a customer has to walk past a lot of other stuff to get what they need. This increases overall sales for the store, but doesn't force anyone to buy anything. So in this small store in a town of about 1,500, I have to walk past rows of canned goods, fruits and vegetables on one side. On the other side are cans of chili, jars of spaghetti sauce, and bags of pasta. I turn the corner and there's a cooler filled with different meat. Ground beef, ground pork, T-bone steaks, Angus beef, cured hams, just stocked with all kinds of meat. And further still, I come to a cooler filled with different cheeses: Colby, pepper jack, Colby jack, extra sharp cheddar, processed slices, and bags of shredded cheese. There are even take-and-bake pizzas and soft taco shells here. Finally, I make it to the milk case. There's quarts, half gallons, gallons, whole milk, 2% skim. There's milk that's 100% lactose-free. There's almond milk. There's fat-free milk, half and half, along with heavy whipping cream, and there are different brands. Think about that. Different brands offering the same products, but asking more money because the quality might be a little higher. All of this in a town of about 1,500. This isn't even a major city. Now, why do I think something so routine like buying a gallon of milk is something so cool? I think it's so cool because it's so routine. It's amazing what we take for granted in this country. For years, milk shortages have plagued socialist Venezuela, but I can find more milk than I can possibly drink in small-town America. How is that possible? Simple. Self-interest and voluntary trades create abundance. The dairy farmer buys a cow not because he feels a responsibility to provide milk for society, but because he wants to make money. He sells it to the market, who buys it because the manager intends to sell it, not for some feeling of social good. Those sales create a profit large enough to feed his family and pay his mortgage. And the only way this can happen is if customers like me voluntarily trade their property for something they value more, like a gallon of milk. As I mentioned before, Walmart and the grocery store were built and exist today in a mixed economy. This use of force did more harm than good. For example, the cotton used in making underwear was most likely subsidized. Taxpayers were looted by the government to pay the farmers because the market price is lower than they can produce the cotton for. Statists love this, pointing to the farmers who are able to keep their farms at the expense of the tribe. But they are committing the most common economic fallacies there are, as highlighted by Henry Hazlitt in Economics in One Lesson. While the immediate effects of the subsidies look good for the farmers, they aren't good for the taxpayers who are propping up an industry that can't support itself. The long-term effects are the unseen losses the taxpayers bear, not only in money, but in quality of life. The money taken from them and given to the farmers could have been used to buy nicer clothes or higher quality food or save for a nicer house. Instead, they couldn't buy those things because of a collectivist belief that the farmer is more important and needed their money more than they did. That's not moral. And this is in the freest economy in history. Now consider one of the least free. In China, between 1958 and 1961, historians estimate almost 45 million Chinese starved to death. The Chinese government admits 15 million. Because of the starvation, it's estimated another 40 million Chinese weren't even born. So we're talking close to 85, 90 million lives ended because of the alleged moral superiority of the collectivist philosophy. This is what's known as the Great Chinese Famine, one of many collectivist famines. In fact, all the world's worst famines during the 20th century occurred in communist countries, and there's no historic record of a famine caused by capitalism. Now, since we're talking about China, let me finish with one final story that might give you an idea of what happened when the producers returned following the strike and Atlas shrugged. In 1978, a meeting was held in a small Chinese village named Xiaogong. This was at the height of communism in China, so there was no personal property in this village at all. To get an understanding of the collectivist mindset at the time, at a previous public meeting with communist officials, a farmer asked if he owned the teeth in his head and was told that they belonged to the collective. The meeting in this story was secret. The farmers gathered that night were there to sign a contract that could result in their execution, but the situation was so bleak they were willing to risk it. You see, year after year, the village found itself short of food, and the farmers often turned to begging the neighboring villages for help. Finally, they'd had enough. They decided that rather than farm as a collective, each family would get its own plot, and if that family grew a surplus, they could keep it. It was an introduction of personal property and self-interest, albeit extremely limited and secret. The farmers there say that before the contract, they would drag themselves out to the fields only when the village whistle blew. After the contract, they were working before dawn. By the end of the season, they harvested more than the previous 5 seasons combined. This got the attention of Communist Party officials who dragged the author of the contract before them, and rather than being executed, he was interviewed. Within a few years, farms across China adopted the capitalist principles laid out in that mud hut, and since 1978, 500 million Chinese have risen out of poverty. It wasn't stricter adherence to altruism that did that. It was self-interest and respect of individual rights. Today, that secret contract is in a Chinese museum. Which brings us to today's paradigm shift. While leftists will tell you that capitalism is immoral, the stories I shared today prove that capitalism is the only moral socio-economic system. Where capitalism respects individual rights, collectivism destroys them. Where capitalism accepts self-interest, tribalism demonizes it. Where capitalism creates abundance, altruism creates famine. Capitalism permits survival while collectivism kills. Mankind using their mind, what Ayn Rand called man's greatest natural resource, to turn raw materials into property is glorious, and trading that property with others in voluntary agreements creates wealth. Wealth creates abundance, and abundance allows life to flourish. How could a system that does all that be anything but moral? That's the paradigm shift. I'm Dwayne Lester. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more of them in the future, please consider making a donation to the Missouri Torch here. And please subscribe to our new YouTube channel and visit us at themissouritorch.com.